What is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think happened? Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
For 2,000 years, the Vatican stayed silent while a remote fortress in Ethiopia guarded the final words of Jesus before his ascension. But for some reason, this particular transcript and the most complete Bible that held these words had been kept hidden from the West.
Does the Ethiopian Bible even mention Jesus? And the short answer to that question is yes. It upholds the life, death, and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ.
On a recent deep dive, Joe Rogan was left stunned by the Ethiopian Bible, which contained details that are almost unbelievable. We'll be unveiling the shocking revelations the Ethiopian scrolls have kept safe all these whiles. To understand why these words were erased, we have to look inside the one book the world was never meant to see, the Forbidden Book. Have you ever picked up a book and realized the most important chapter was ripped out? Well, that's how some scholars felt about the Bible for years. It all goes back to when Jesus rose from the dead, appeared to a few people, and then floated up to heaven. These scholars felt that the times in between these periods were too fast, almost rushed. There is a 40-day gap where we are told Jesus taught the apostles, yet there is very little information about the actual conversation. While the Western Bible doesn't explicitly mention the details of the conversation, the Ethiopian Bible fills this silence with a document called the Epistula Apostolorum. This text of this book is said to be filled with close to 60 Q&A sessions between the risen Christ and his followers, which includes a detailed account of what happened during his final weeks on earth. In the book, the apostles asked questions, and the answers they got were far more mystical than what we are used to hearing. Jesus described his resurrection not as a simple return to a physical body, but as a metamorphosis. He explained that his form had changed into a light body, which was neither a ghostly nor a fleshy form. It was something else entirely. This level of mysticism relating to the resurrection was a roadmap for what humans could eventually become, and is a core part of Ethiopian tradition. Perhaps the most chilling part of the conversation Jesus had with his disciples involves the outcome of the future. In these scrolls, Jesus warns his followers about what is coming for the church. He specifically mentions blind leaders and corrupt teachers who would eventually step in to edit his message to suit a narrative. He predicted that his words would be twisted to serve the interests of powerful men rather than the souls of the people. This warning explains why the Ethiopian church worked so hard to keep their 81 books exactly as they were. They believed they were protecting the unfiltered truth from a world that wanted to bury it. While the West moved toward a simplified version of the faith, Ethiopia kept the complex details of these final conversations hidden for years. But if these words were so important, why did the Roman Empire spend centuries making sure no one could know about it? In the 4th century, the Roman Emperor Constantine wanted to unite his massive empire under one single religion. To do this, he needed one official book to keep them in check. His team of bishops looked through hundreds of available scrolls and decided which ones would make the cut. They were looking for consistency and themes that encouraged obedience to authority. While this was happening, the Aksumite Empire in Ethiopia was doing something very different from what the Roman Emperor planned. Instead, they were collecting every sacred writing they could find. This eventually led to their 81-book Bible, while the West settled on much fewer. The Roman Church eventually started labeling everything they did not choose as heresy, and this was a dangerous tag back then. If a book talked about finding God directly within yourself without the help of a priest, it was seen as a threat to the state. The Roman version of the Bible began to focus heavily on sin, and the idea that humans are debtors who need an institution to save them, which was far different from the Ethiopian texts, which were more like a guide to cosmic sovereignty. In these older scrolls, the resurrection wasn't just about Jesus paying a debt for humanity, but also about reclaiming your internal power of God. We know these texts are not some modern invention because of the Garima Gospels. These are the oldest illustrated Christian books on the planet that were discovered in a remote monastery in the Ethiopian highlands. When scientists used carbon dating on them, they found the books were hundreds of years older than almost any Bible in Europe. This was yet another proof that Ethiopia had the unfiltered version of these stories long before the Vatican or King James even existed. Many researchers speculate the West ignored these versions because they revealed too much about human potential. If people realized they had a direct line to the divine, they might not feel the need to support a massive religious institution. This suppression was not about theology alone. It was about control, and it caught the attention of the world's biggest podcaster. Joe Rogan's fascination with the Ethiopian link. Joe Rogan, who is an American podcaster, has spent hundreds of hours sitting across from people like Graham Hancock and Billy Carson discussing things that seem to defy both science and the history books. One of the topics that has garnered millions of listeners has to do with the hidden mysteries of religion, especially Christianity. More times than one, he often circles back to Ethiopia because it feels like the epicenter of a story that has not been fully told. Joe gets genuinely fired up when he realizes that the version of history we are taught is often a cleaned-up edit. When you look at Ethiopia, the mysteries are hard to ignore. Take the Ark of the Covenant, for example. While most people think of it as a movie prop, Joe and his guests talk about it as a piece of ancient technology. In the city of Aksum, a single monk guards what they claim is the actual Ark. This fits perfectly with the idea that the Ethiopian Bible contains technical secrets the rest of the world lost or ignored. Rogan also looks at this through the lens of human consciousness. He has wondered out loud if ancient rituals in these Ethiopian highlands involved reaching higher states of awareness. Since their Bible has 15 more books than ours, it raises questions about what kind of mental or spiritual exercises they were performing. He finds it fascinating that these texts might be instructions for unlocking parts of the human mind that we have forgotten how to use. This brings up his famous interest in the intersection of spirituality and science. He sees a connection between the mystical visions described in ancient scrolls and the experiences people have today in deep meditation or altered states. One of the biggest shifts for Joe was the realization that the earliest form of this faith was African. For centuries, the West has pictured these stories through a European lens with specific art and culture. Seeing the Ethiopian perspective changes everything. It changes the face of Jesus and the cultural context of the entire religion. Joe was stunned to learn that while Europe was still in its dark ages, Ethiopia was already preserving the most complete record of Christ's life. He realized the official history of Christianity is missing its most important chapters. Joe often asks, what else are they hiding? To answer that, we have to look at the book the West fears most. The Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is the one written scripture that shakes the foundation of traditional religious history. For centuries, this book was unknown to the Western world. It was lost to everyone except the scribes in Ethiopia, who kept it safe in their ancient language called Ge'ez. This gave Ethiopia a massive monopoly on the secrets of time and messages of the divine. The text does not focus only on faith, but also on a group of beings called the Watchers, who were fallen angels. They weren't sent by God or fall from grace. They made their way to earth and started sharing forbidden secrets. They taught humans how to work with metals, how to track the stars, and even how to use plants for medicine. To the early Roman Church, this information was dangerous because it suggested that human advancement came from a source they could not control. The crazy part is how the Watchers allegedly influenced human genetics. The book describes them having children with humans, creating a hybrid race known as the Nephilim. This adds a layer of biological mystery to the Bible that the West tried to scrub away. When you read the post-resurrection words of Jesus in the Ethiopian Bible, you notice something specific. He uses the phrase Son of Man over and over. This title is a centerpiece of the book of Enoch, showing a direct link between the two texts. It is as if Jesus were quoting Enoch to explain his own identity. This connection makes the Roman decision to ban the book even more suspicious. If the person they worshipped was referencing this text, why would they bury it? The answer can only be found in the descriptions Enoch gives of his travels. He describes moving through portals in the sky and seeing the earth from the perspective of a modern pilot rather than an ancient nomad. He talks about gates of fire and wheels within wheels, which means Enoch is a blueprint for the supernatural world that we are only now starting to reconsider. The book of Enoch is a massive piece of the puzzle of time, but the Ethiopian Bible contains a secret chronicle of the world's most powerful artifact known as the Kebra Nagast, or the Glory of Kings. While the Western world was focusing on a Roman version of history, this text was recording the meeting of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Their encounter was far more than a simple visit between two royals. It resulted in a son named Menelik, who eventually traveled back to Jerusalem to meet his father. According to the Ethiopian record, when Menelik returned home, he brought the Ark of the Covenant with him. This changed the spiritual landscape of the entire world. The text argues that because of certain choices made in Jerusalem, the divine presence actually moved to Ethiopia. This claim is a massive shift for anyone used to the traditional story of the Middle East. By keeping this history alive, Ethiopia established what they call the Solomonic dynasty, insisting that the bloodline of the Lion of Judah continued through an African lineage. This means the family tree of Jesus is tied directly to this Ethiopian history. For centuries, the emperors of Ethiopia used that title to show they were the guardians of this sacred connection. Looking back at the post-resurrection words found in the Ethiopian Bible, Jesus validates this specific line of authority. He speaks about the throne of David in a way that suggests it has a physical and spiritual home on earth that the rest of the world has forgotten. This is not only a matter of faith or ancient legends, as archaeologists have found massive ruins in the city of Aksum that date back to the exact time of the Queen of Sheba. They discovered stone structures and artifacts that prove this region was a global powerhouse of wealth and influence. These finds give weight to the idea that the Kebra Nagast is a historical record rather than a collection of myths. It paints a picture of a kingdom that was prepared to protect the world's most important artifacts and truths when other nations were failing to do so. If the bloodline was moved, then the words spoken after the resurrection were not only for the Levant, but for the entire world. These scrolls contain a terrifying warning that most people have never been allowed to read. The miracle of the resurrection in JRE translation. Most Western versions of the Bible come from Greek or Latin that was translated to English, but the Ethiopian Bible uses an ancient language called JRE. Some people might like to think the language is special because it is much closer to the roots of the world Jesus lived in. Apart from the Ethiopian Bible, another book that was important to biblical scholars was the Ethiopian Synaxarium, which contains accounts of miracles that happened after the resurrection, which never made it into the Roman version. One of the most striking differences is who Jesus visited first. While the Western Bible says he appeared to Mary Magdalene, the Ethiopian tradition is clear that he went to his mother Mary first. In these texts, he shares secrets with her that establish her as a powerful figure in the spiritual world. She is seen as someone who helps bridge the gap between heaven and earth. This version of the story gives her a much more central role in the foundations of the faith and portrays her as a partner in the mission rather than a background character. Jesus also spent this time teaching his followers about spiritual warfare and did not only tell them to be good people. He gave them specific prayers of power designed to cast out darkness and protect their souls. These texts prove that humans have a lot more influence over the spiritual realm than we are usually told. It puts the power back into the hands of the individual rather than an institution. These prayers of power were something that the Roman Church could not allow. But how did these books survive the flames of history? The isolated fortress. Ethiopia survived because it is essentially a fortress made of mountains. While the rest of the world was being conquered or pressured to change their religious texts, the Ethiopian Church was hidden away in the Simeon Mountains. Some of their monasteries, such as Debre Damo, can only be reached by climbing a thick rope up a sheer cliff face. This geographic shielding meant that when the Roman Empire or later Islamic empires moved through the region, these libraries remained untouched. They were literally islands in the sky. In the 1500s, Portuguese Jesuits arrived with the goal of forcing the Roman Catholic Bible onto the people. They wanted to trim the Ethiopian canon down to the standard Western size. This led to a violent conflict because the Ethiopians refused to give up their ancient scrolls. They had been hand-copying these 81 books onto goatskin parchment for over 1,000 years. Every scribe followed a strict process to ensure not a single letter was changed. This dedication created a direct link to the past that the West lost during the Middle Ages. Today, thousands of these manuscripts sit in hidden libraries on the islands of Lake Tana, still unread by the outside world. Within these unread manuscripts lies the revelation Joe Rogan alluded to regarding the truth about what Jesus said about the end of the age. The Ethiopian version of the end of the world looks very different from the scary images we see in Western movies. One reason is a book called the Book of Jubilees. It provides a specific calendar that tracks time in cycles of 49 years. This changes the entire timeline for when the second coming is supposed to happen. While Westerners argue over dates, the Ethiopian texts suggest the end is more about a spiritual renewal than a sudden disaster. It is a non-linear apocalypse. This means the world goes through seasons of decay and rebirth rather than one final stop. There is also the Apocalypse of Peter, which gives a much more detailed description of the Antichrist. It describes this figure as someone who uses specific types of deception that sound surprisingly modern. In these post-resurrection conversations, Jesus also confirms the final fate of the Watchers. These were the fallen beings mentioned in the book of Enoch. He explains that their judgment is a key part of fixing the world. Some researchers speculate that the reason these details were removed from the Western Bible was to keep people in the dark about where we actually are in history. If our timeline is altered, then our understanding of Christ's nature is fundamentally flawed. Is it possible Jesus wasn't a teacher, but a cosmic traveler? Science and the Ethiopian Bible. The Ethiopian Bible describes the resurrection not as a simple return to life, but as a total defiance of science. These ancient scrolls speak of a body made of light, which sounds remarkably like what quantum scientists study today when they look at light-encoded information. These texts were comfortable with the idea of 7 heavens and other worlds long before modern string theory suggested there are multiple dimensions. Even the traditional Ethiopian chants, known as Zima, are said to be based on celestial frequencies revealed by Christ. When scientists finally used carbon dating on the Garima Gospels, they were stunned to find these books were far older than the experts originally claimed. This discovery is why so many people are turning away from the standard versions of history. While the 66 books found in a typical Bible provide a summary of the faith, the 81 books in the Ethiopian canon are the complete manual for the Christian faith. This version places a massive emphasis on the idea that the kingdom of heaven is a power located inside you. This change in perspective is causing a global movement toward the original African roots of the faith. Ethiopia is now at the center of the truth seeker community because it forces a total reevaluation of Western history. We have been given a fraction of the truth, and now the full picture is emerging. there is an even more controversial layer to this story. Some researchers speculate the post-resurrection words reveal that our world is a holographic simulation or a spiritual trial. In these older scrolls, Jesus gives warnings about entities that influence human thoughts and feed on fear. There are also prophecies about a coming solar flash, described as a light from the east that will eventually change human consciousness forever. This is likely why Joe Rogan felt such a heavy emotional weight when discussing these topics. It feels as though humanity were orphaned from its true heritage by censors who wanted to keep these secrets hidden. Whether you view these words as literal history or a cosmic metaphor, their influence is undeniable. We are left wondering if the removal of these 15 books was a simple mistake or a deliberate attempt to keep us from realizing our true potential. Do you think the Ethiopian Bible holds the original blueprint for human consciousness? Let us know in the comments. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching.